Well, I call the meeting to order, and the first event is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have an agenda in front of us, and this is a joint meeting for the purpose of reviewing, I guess, edit funds and how they were handled in the past few years, and also in 25. I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so now we're up to item 3, which is the edit fund 1112. And what actually has happened there. And I don't know, Chris, do you want to start it off or whoever? This is I think it's primarily the sheriff's department only?
Yes, that's
Is that the only
that's
one?
the only one. There's an issue I wanted to kind of discuss, what came to this, which I'm sure you all know. I had asked last year if we could separate the edit dollars into funds. With fund accounting, account lines do not carry cash balances. They only carry appropriations, okay? So when you're going to look at a fund, to get a cash balance is where you need to be. So in the edit fund 1112, you have this cash balance of you have a cash balance, but it's divided into different pie pieces that go in there. The economic development, the courthouse security, the major building maintenance, the special projects, the highway projects, and jail operations, okay? So it started discussion last year that we wanted to divide that out where we could actually see, what's the cash balance of each of these. So in March, the council passed the ordinances to set up these funds. So then Kelly Wilgus and I have been working trying to break that $1,486,415.90 down. Okay, so let me step back there. The money that we have received in 2025 for edit dollars has already been received into the new funds, okay? So, because we kept all that in the 7,000 holding accounts until you guys got that set, where really all we'd have to do with is splitting the money up that was in 1112. So all the monthly money that we've received for edit is already in the new setup funds, okay? So now we've just got to take the money that was already in 112 and divide them out. And that's what we've been working on trying to figure out, okay? So like I said, with fund accounting, you can't pull a report and say, okay, this is the balance of economic development. This is the balance of each of these funds. You kind of have to go back years, but we really don't have in a sense, starting point, because you've got to have a beginning balance plus revenue plus expenditures to get your ending balance and then to start the next year. There are a couple departments that keep track of that. One being the highway. She balances every month, so she keeps her cash balance of her edit, make sure we compile, we're good there. So that's one that we've kept, in there, okay? So basically with Kelly and I going through this and working, trying to figure all this out, went back several years. The biggest discussion that we've got is we've come to the jail operations is at a negative balance. And putting some notes together to try to explain to you guys where that came to be. The problem basically came in 2024. There was a change in our edit plan. The previous edit plan was based off of percentages. So when we get the supplemental and whatnot, we would divide that still out based on the percentages. Do I think that's the only issue? No, basically we have spent more than we brought in. That is the nutshell of it in jail operations. In 2020, I'll go back to 2022. In 2022, as you guys can see, I gave you the notes. For jail operations, the amount of money that was brought in was $268,480.68. The amount that was expended was $268,480.68. The amount that was expended was $262,867.06. So of course, you can see there, you brought in more money than you expended. In 2023, the amount of money brought in was $349,508.32. And the amount that was expended was $309,501.45. Again, you brought in more than you expended.
Okay, let me stop you right there, Chris.
Okay.
What I've got down, what would have been allocated for the jail was $304,781 based on in 23, it was a 23.5% of what we took in. And in that economic development is 1.426, it's 1,426,638.
Okay.
So 23.5% of that takes you to 304, unless, I don't know what else you're including to get to the 349.
Here's the revenue report that I have.
Well, I just got the edit plan,
Yeah.
the commissioners put it together. So,
Well, the amount that we received in that month, then I know that the supplemental went in as well, because we divided out by percentages that year. So
Okay. Supplemental would have been additional
additional.
42,672.
The amount of supplemental that went in there in May was 42,672.31.
That is correct.
And it looks like in January, February, and March, the amounts were 27,398.33. I think you guys did an amendment to the edit plan in April of 2020. Actually, you did it in March of 2023. So, and then in April, the amount changed to 25,398.44.
So did you not even them back out?
No,
See,
because the
because-
edit plan didn't go into effect until that, so.
Okay, our edit plan is 23. Here's, and David's familiar with this here, because we paid the jail off in 22.
Okay,
Okay, so the special legislation, and it was 50 cents went away. But at that time, we were struggling in a couple areas, and what we did was add back in 9 cents to the edit. A nickel of that went to building maintenance, and 2 cents and 2 cents. One was what, certified shares and public safety?
Public
Is that the other two?
yeah.
So it added 2 cents to public safety and 2 cents to certified shares. Now, what we did, our edit plan at that time was in 22 was 50% highway, 20% economic development, and then it was 30%, which is a split between jail and security, which the jail got 23.5, and security was 6.5.
yep, and those changes went into effect in
Okay.
April.
And I think I emailed you a spreadsheet on that.
Yes, you
David had
did.
put together earlier than that. But, so what you're saying you did in that year, you didn't set anything aside for building maintenance for the first 3 months?
Correct, because the
Okay.
edit plan amendment didn't go into effect until April. And nothing was said to go and amend those. The edit plan went into effect in April, so then it will go into effect going forward. So as you can see, March, or January, February, and March is a different amount. And then once that went into effect, then April on forward is when it was done.
Okay.
And it was never, it said for me to go back and adjust that.
Okay, so, but you put supplemental and spread it according to the percentages? And that's not in the edit plan.
We had always divided before, and I know I had a conversation with Mr. Mr. David, about dividing how we do that. And he said we had always divided it by percentages before. And if it needs to be done differently, I'm okay with that, but nothing's been said for me to do it differently. Going forward, we've not put divided the supplemental out. It's went into special projects.
Right, we just did that to clarify it with
Yeah.
a written document.
And I'm
But,
good with whatever, but if we're talking about something that's gonna make the negative even more. I just wanna fix it.
I'm just
whatever we
trying to
need
get,
do.
I'm just trying to bring clarity to where we actually are, number-wise.
That the amendment to the edit plan went into effect in April of 2023. Those changes went on. I still divided the supplemental as it had been done in the past, because there was nothing in that edit plan that said any additional funding is supposed to go here or whatever, so we divided it. I'm good with whatever you guys want to say, but we've just got to, whatever we want to do, whatever it's supposed to do. But it was not spelled out in the edit plan for it to go a certain place. So we divide out. And you got to understand, 2023 was my first year as auditor. So I'm leaning on Mr. Ancient mostly because he was the council president on that. And I'm not trying to, this is just by memory of what we talked about. I don't know.
I just remember whenever we went through this thing, we adjusted all those percentages out, and that was early in the year. Because using the old percentages would not have set aside anything for building maintenance. And I remember when we did all that, and I was thinking that was January.
No, if you
I'd have to
look
look
at the
back
edit
at-
plan, yeah.
I'd have to look back at when we put together the spreadsheet on that. But
I don't think it
Okay,
actually,
so
so
I'm
that's
just-
where we're at. I'm good with however we want to move it or whatever. This is just the numbers I'm dealing with and what we got right now on how we want to. So, there's that. Let me go, let me get back to where I was. So in the books right now, basically in 2023, you brought in 349,508.32. You expended 309,501.45. Now you take on to 2024, okay? 2024, your only revenue is the 274, we left money, this is when we changed, let me talk about this too. In 2023, when I was seeking counsel from Baker Tilly on the annual financial report, one of the issues that was brought to our attention, which being a new auditor, not working in the auditor's office before, there's probably things that the previous auditors who had experience or whatever knew things to do. But they advised that we had our edit dollars coming in and they were going from the 7,000 account, which is your receivable account, and just being expended. We had some going into general, we had some going into jail operations, because jail operations already had a fund, 4927. And then we had some going into 1112, okay? For budgeting purposes, when you guys get ready to do budget, you need clear pictures. So they said your edit dollars all need to go into 1112 first. So then when you pull a report to see what your annual revenue is, you've got it all there. You're not having to go all these different places looking for it, okay? They're like, all of your edit dollars need to go into 1112 and then they can be expended, okay? So in 2024, we like to start things, it's cleaner to start things at the beginning of a year. So, of course, I found this out in 2023. We finished 2023 using 4927, the old jail. So we kept doing everything the same. Then in 2024, all of the jail operations money started going into 1112, which was originally going into 4927. And then also our courthouse security, which we can talk about that later, which was going into general, started going into 1112. Okay, so all these pieces of your monthly money that's coming in that get broke out are all now going into 1112. Okay, so in 2024, we had a correction of error because the special legislation actually got put into 1112 in error, and it should have went into 1114, which is now 4,800. But anyway, our income was 274,166.52. Our expenditures, which I don't have that amount written down because I had to subtract out the correction of error. I apologize, 1 second. 354,948.52 minus 380,782. That's your revenue, sorry. Expenditure, oh, no, I do have it. Okay, so your expenditures are 316,932.35. So as you can see, in 2024, we expended more money than what was brought in. We also have some revenue that was still remaining in 4927. So that's kind of where we're looking at that as a full picture now too, because there was still money in 4927 remaining from 2023. So that takes you up to 2024. I think that's where we should. So as of right now, prior to us getting lit this year, let me say this, okay. We've already expended some of the 2025 budget
Okay, Chris, before we go any farther, let's stay,
Okay.
let's don't get into 25. That's the
Well, I don't know
current, we'll,
I'm trying to
We'll
give
deal
you
with
the balances where we're at.
well, let's
Go
just,
ahead.
where were we at the end of 2024? Where were we at as far as, and it's
As far as-
strictly the jail is the only issue.
At the end of 24, the jail is negative the jail is negative, well, no, because we paid 133 out of there. So, not that. So, if you take the 170, yep, okay, 4927. So we've expended 103,620.64. The balance is negative 176. So the negative balance would be the difference of those because that's just 1112. Yep. So because we're just talking about 1112. Okay. So 1112 at the end of, so we're negative 176,386.47 minus 133,620.64. So the reason what I'm doing is I'm just looking at 1112. Telling you that currently right now, that cash balance is negative 176,386.347. They've expended 133,620.64 out of it this year. So it was negative 42,765.83. Let me do that one more time just to make sure I have that right.
We were negative and then they spent more and then now we are less.
I think she said that's what their negative was 2020.
At the end of 2024, and of course, things have come out. And that's what happens when you're looking at one big pie puzzle. It never shows negative because you've got all these factors in here. You know, the fact that you've got, 450,000 in special projects is offsetting the negative. The fact that you've got that's where you don't see it when it's all in one big pot together. That's why I wanted to separate the funds out to where we can see the cash balance of each one. So just answering where we're at. Currently, right now, like I said, is negative the 176,386.47. They've expended 133,620.64 out of 1112 in 2025. So subtracting those would give you their 2024 ending balance.
Be 42,700.
765, what was the change on that? So I write it down.
I cleared it out. Sorry, let me do it again. 176. Be good because I was going to do it twice anyway, just to make sure. I like to get numbers twice.
The 386.47, what you talking about?
No, what she was actually
Well,
in
they didn't have.
deficit 2024.
Oh, 46.
That is it.
Be 42,765.
0.83.
83.
0.83.
42,765.83.
Okay,
Okay, we're good?
so I got a simple question there.
Okay.
The rest of the funds are okay.
Mhm.
How does just run through the procedure on how, I know edit's different. Edit is the plans put together by the commissioners. Okay, so I understand that. So what's the process to spend edit dollars? In other words, what triggers the ability to spend $1 out of an edit account? Go through the process, how that occurs.
We put a budget in for the jail. We put so you're talking two different
I'm
things.
just saying, like, how do we spend $1 of edit jail money?
You put a claim in, so we
Okay,
put the
so
appropriations in,
Generate the claim comes from,
the jail.
okay, so in other words, they fill out this claim form.
Mhm.
They put down the number,
Mhm.
okay, and then they request payment of that,
Correct, I filed a claim, yep.
okay. Okay, and then it's sent to the auditor's office.
Mhm.
You review the claim,
Mhm.
and then it's brought approval to the commissioners to sign off on.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's already an edit-approved fund,
Yep.
the council actually doesn't have involvement, right?
Right, and the reason you don't see any negative in there is because they're not going over their appropriation. So when you somebody sends a claim, okay, since this is all one big pot, you have your appropriation. So if you say you can spend $30,000 on there, as long as they don't go over that $30,000, we're not gonna see it. The cash balance is still gonna show positive because the fund's still positive. Because you've got all these different lines, where if we had this separated like 4927,
Well, we don't.
Yes.
I mean,
But that's where the problem lays, is they didn't overspend their appropriation, they overspent the cash. And the reason we didn't see it is because the cash, just like for instance, I'm gonna bring up 2025, just where you guys can understand what I'm saying. In 2025, they're only projected to bring in 274,122.52, okay? That's how much cash is gonna be brought in 2025 for jail operations. Do you know what budget was adopted? $398,023. So, let me explain,
okay, but we're into 25.
but let me explain this.
Okay, all right.
So, we have an appropriation in there that they can spend $398, because that is the budget you gave them. There are two different things you're looking at. So when we are watching, when somebody enters a claim, we are watching to make sure they're not going over budget, okay? So they're not going over budget. As long as they don't spend more than, this year, spend $398, any more than $398.23. There's also a cash balance on there, but guess what? There's a whole lot of other cash in 1112, because I don't know how much cash that jail operations has, because it's one big pot. So are you seeing why I'm saying this wasn't visible, this wasn't being seen, because it was all one big pot? So the route that we're going, separating these, is going to eliminate this error, because you're not only gonna see where they're at on their budget, but you're also gonna see where they're at on their cash. I'm not a very good teacher, I'm trying to explain that as plain as could be. I don't want it to sit here and be like, oh my gosh, the auditor's office should have known. You know, all of us should have known. All of us should have known and looked and seen, wait, we're budgeting more than what we're bringing in. The other thing is, the only thing, I think we need to look at the edit plan, because Mr. Cole and I spoke yesterday, proven point. You guys don't, the council doesn't budget for economic development, that's not in the budget book. All the other parts of LIT are not in economic development, or are not in the budget book. The only thing that's in there is a couple. Can't remember what the other one is. If you go to page 56 in your budget book, the 180's there, I guess, yes, that is. Then the jail operations is there,
That was new, that
and highway.
courthouse security wasn't in
Yeah.
there, or special,
And this courthouse
Special
security
projects
has
and all
been
that.
in there for a long time.
Yeah.
Okay, let me go back to 2024,
Okay.
if I may, just before we get into 25. In our edit plan, we allocated for jail operations $274,166.55. Is that in your budget?
The amount of revenue? No.
Because what you're saying is that in 25, they had this huge sum in there, and so that's not gonna trigger anything. But what was it in 24, which would have came through, what was it in your budget book in 24?
The problem is, their budget book only holds expenditures. It doesn't hold revenue. When you're looking at
So
revenue,
what's any difference in 24 versus now you're saying in 25, which is talking about just revenue that they budgeted 390,000? I'm just trying to get it, see how that's correlated.
I think at budget time, we need to take more time and look at the revenue.
Okay. I'm just wondering how we overspent 42,000. Normally, in these situations, we go through asking for money, the auditor approves it, the commissioner signs off on it, and it goes through the process. If anybody spends in excess of what's allocated, then they must come in front of both the commissioners and council for additional appropriations.
But they don't submit a budget on this. I mean, I don't.
But I mean, how is our, so in my question is, had some other entity, let's just say, for instance, the highway department, would have came in and just started submitting claims, as long as there was a cash balance in 11112, we'd approve the
Nope.
claims and send it right out to them and everything. Okay, so why is the jail operations different than?
Because the appropriations that were set in there. The budget, we put the appropriation in there. The only appropriations we're putting in there are PCD, or economic development. So I know that we can't pay more than 180,000. The highway, they're 700,000.
Well, it's really not right.
What are you talking
That might be what you have in there, but our edit plan.
This is the budget, well, then we need to communicate, this is what the council approved.
Well, I sent you the spreadsheet on this. This is what, right now, the highway gets allocated 640,000 for 24. In 23, they got 648,472.60, but that's based on a 12-month deal where we had the percentages taken out in order to generate the nickel into the building maintenance fund.
I'm just saying, this is the budget that the
I don't know why the
council,
700,000.
the council adopted. This is the budget that the council adopted, so these are the appropriations.
Now, I
that
will
we put
say
in.
though, we can only go by the numbers that we have in front of us. So we have to use that information at budget time that was presented to us that it's accurate.
So the lit economic
I
development
mean, I'm
goes
just,
off of a contract, so I put the 180 in there, The jail, I know that you guys moved a lot of stuff.
Are you talking, now are we looking at 24, which one are we looking at?
I mean,
Look at 24.
No, what are you looking at
She's
right
like
there?
20.
This is
25.
You're at
25.
20, let's stay back, don't.
It's the
get-
same thing. These are the only things that were budgeted. And then the highway submits their 700,000
I don't know. I'm
In
not-
24, I don't think there's anything in there even.
in the budget book.
I don't think so, was it?
See, the edit has always been based upon the edit plan.
Mm-hmm.
You guys don't really have a say in that. You don't come in and say, well, we're gonna move so much of this edit money over to here or there. That's the reason state mandates a edit plan.
See,
Approved.
and in the past, whenever the previous auditor, she would be using, it was simple, I guess more simple, because it was all based on those percentages.
Yes,
And now it's not,
based on percentages.
it's based on actual dollars. And so you would need to follow what is in that edit plan,
Which is being done. Because the edit plan is being followed by, the edit plan was amended in 2023. Those changes went into effect. The edit plan, a new edit plan went into effect for 2024. And the edit plan is being followed. We just need to adjust the budget on the jail operations, because right now it said that it's spending more.
So it takes me back, how did you get $42,765.83 spent over and above what the edit plan called for?
so you didn't have a spreadsheet for each of these individuals that you were keeping track, so we would know, and it would just look like there was a bunch of cash in the whole big pot, so that's how the overspend, is that what you're saying? And I guess I thought that there would be a spreadsheet for each one of these where you keep track of what.
I don't have a starting spot. There never was.
How did they do it before?
I don't have a spreadsheet. I'll have to ask
At the
Ms.
same
Donovan. I
time,
don't have
though,
anything.
we may have the beginning and ending balance in error, but we know what our revenue is because the state provides us our
Yes.
revenue. And then it was broken down because I did both spreadsheets. I think David did the 23 and I did 24. That said the monthly allotment for each one of these. The only thing that we didn't include is supplemental because we never know how
What we're
much
gonna get.
that'll be. So that's just laying out there.
I just want to get the starting, you guys to help tell me, what do we do? Where do we move forward with getting these cash balances where we can do 2025 right?
My question is how we overspent $42,000. See, that's.
Where's the budget for, in 2025?
I just think, it should have stopped at some point and said you've spent all the edit plan's money. So at that point, you need to come in for additional appropriations in some fashion. Because, that's the only reason you do a budget and you do these edit plans is to follow them.
You have 24.
The book, yeah,
I didn't bring it, sorry.
I just brought it. Jail operations 61. So jail operations was in the budget book in 2024. Page 61. In 61, the proposed budget was 307,836, and the adopted budget, that was the adopted.
That, it was the same. So I see it right here on this Form B.
So what was proposed was it?
will be,
How was it funded?
307,836.
Through edit money, 23.
100% edit money?
And what did we bring in?
24.
You set aside in 24, 274,000, let's see where it is here. Get into that.
Which one?
274, 166.55 is what the edit plan calls for.
Yep.
So about 32,000.
so I don't know where that 307 came from. Was that still based on a percentage?
That might have been right.
That's not too hard to do.
Presented.
Nope. Because if you took the gross amount and used the 023.5, you'd be at 362,000, but you're leaving out all the rest of the accounts. So if you went back,
Without supplement.
yeah, because we took in 1.5 million plus.
Is it at 30%?
No, you'd be way up there then. See, what we did, remember we changed the percentages in order to reflect the building maintenance? Because the old percentages would not set aside anything for that building maintenance fund. And I didn't bring my spreadsheet.
So is
that had
it at
percentages.
this,
Yeah, there's your percentages. That's where we changed in 23. So let's just say 1.5.
Yeah, that's the old record. Yep, that's
Prior
prior
to
to 23.
23, right?
23 was our old percentages.
Yeah.
That's what David has here.
Okay,
It didn't go to $5 amounts till 2024.
that's right.
Jail was,
And then all the
That's-
extra, anything.
23.
No,
see, here's jail and security, and then that's breaking.
Old edit plan
Mhm.
expired in
Mhm.
12/31 and 23, the new edit plan went into effect.
Didn't they change it though, because this
They
got
made an
changed,
amendment.
So what did
this
they end
was
up?
marked out.
Yeah,
because
they
it
made
just-
the amendment.
289.
Yeah.
well, let's
In
put it out.
2023,
That's
they
why I
made
did
the
that.
amendment in
304.
April and
So see,
changed.
for some
took
reason,
out
It's
that
close to
extra
that.
it's close, but it's still, I don't know where that $307,000 even came from.
partially through.
partially in
Because it's not-
2023,
it's not
then
following
went from
what was
percentages to
available
$5
in
amounts.
23.
Still
And they
about
changed this
3,000
to
over.
not say
Yeah.
that, just.
So, I mean, I'm just bringing this to you guys. I mean, I feel that this will be a lot easier. I mean, I'm totally taking some ownership of this. I feel that, we all need to, but there's a lot of plates that spin in the auditor's office, and this is one of the big things that I wanted to be able to divide these funds out, it's not just one big pot, where you can easily see, okay, this amount of jail operation money is being brought in, this amount is being expended, this amount of economic development money is being brought in, and that, because you can't visibly see that when it's all one big pot and one big
To
fund.
see what we had going into the beginning of 2024, the jail was operating out of 4927. I remember looking at the early part, maybe the 18th or 20th of January in there was still funding being expended out of the 4927. I assume that was probably balances that were rolled over from
Correct.
previous years, not spending the total amount. So that still had expenditures coming out of it. Then where it really broke apart was when everything just got shoved into 1112, and there was no one monitoring expenditures, I guess, for anybody.
4927, we put the appropriations in. So if you budgeted 180 for economic development, we put it in.
But they weren't right to begin with, is what you're saying. They were based off of something old.
Well, I went off of this, jail operations in
I mean, that's
2024.
based
You guys budget, which I get it, the edit plan, but this was in the book. This is what, and these are
Who makes the
the,
book up?
well, you guys, they do the
You
budget.
guys make the book up?
No, that's what I'm saying, and I'm not trying to place blame here, but when we're presented those numbers, as long as they're correct, we have to assume that they're correct. So that's what we go by. when
But
we
you guys
budget.
moved a lot of stuff around. You moved stuff from being funded out of one fund to another fund. And it's a lot to have to remember in that, so we
I'm
know,
not trying to place
Yeah.
blame, I'm just
yeah,
saying.
it's a lot to have to remember. You guys moved a lot of stuff out of general to different places this year, and we know we've done that before. So this right here is what we enter into LAO as far as the budget and appropriations. Okay, and our job is to make sure we keep into play the budget that you guys give us, that the council gives us. I see errors, obviously, we just need to fix them. You know, obviously, the council now really doesn't have any say in the edit. There shouldn't be really any budget to be done in edit. And I think we can fix that going forward as far as that. But we need to look at, there still needs to be a budget part of it, because we should be able to say, hey, jail, you only have $274,122.55 to deal with. Should it just be my responsibility to say, hey, we budgeted 309? No, that's not, I mean.
We don't have dealings with that edit plan. So that's what I'm trying to say. Like, whenever we presented the numbers, we just have to go by what we're presented. And I'm not trying to come down hard on you or anything. I'm just saying, yes, that does need to be corrected going forward, because we wouldn't know unless I had that edit plan right here, which I don't bring up to the budget. So I don't bring things like that to the budget, because I just assume that it's already in there accurately. So I'm not trying to be hard on you. I'm just saying.
But see, this question, I look back at the old 304,781.32, which was the 23 jail amount. But for something that when you went into your budget book, the number went in as 307,836. Not a lot of difference.
I think that some of those are previous bills from the previous year, because there was stuff in 2023 that was paid out of 4927 and 1112.
But even
I
at that, I
combine
mean,
those.
as far as budgeting, how did that different number just show up? I don't know.
You mean
It's
the
like-
beginning total?
Well, yeah, when you put it in your budget book, because that was the number she read off that was in there. But
You're
in
talking about the cash
23,
balance, or are you talking about a budget?
a budget amount you said was in there for the jail
On
operations.
61, yeah.
Yeah,
307,836. But the
And-
previous year, it was 304,781.32 is what was actually in the edit plan to pay to the jail.
I know 24 was my first budget, you know, doing the 24 budget in 2023. So we took the budget book, so every page that was in the budget book in 2022, when you're in 2023 budget, is what we brought to you. And that's what I've done. So obviously in 2022, you guys approved a budget for jail operations. Just like lid's in here too. You know, the lid is on 36, 37, and 38.
And see, that one conforms to the economic development or the, edit plan. The
So basically,
22.
it just did, in 24,
I just think in 24, we didn't think, okay, we need to check, because we need to, I look at the Form 4B, okay? The Form 4B is gonna tell me how much estimated, what your ending cash balance is, what your estimated ending cash balance is, your estimated revenue, and then I put in the budget, okay? And then you get your ending cash balance. You're getting that all as one piece in 1112. It's hard for you to break down, you know, the pieces of it. So when we were at budget time, I'm not looking at how much money is jail operations. We need to bring the edit plan, or not even talk about the edit plan, or I think it does need to be looked at, because you have to approve a budget. You know, you have to, or does the edit budget need to go to the council to make sure, or to the commissioners, where you make sure you're not spending more than 274? I mean, that's part of the budget. You're budgeting all the money that's coming in. So I think what missed is that we, in a sense, approved a budget over the amount of money that was coming in. And I'll take ownership that I didn't say, hey, guys, you're only bringing in 274. We did too much.
When you went into 1112, though, you set up accounts, 41, 42, 40, whatever, for each one of these categories.
Mhm.
So you were tracking expenses in those accounts.
Revenue to expenditures. Mhm.
Right. So,
But those are, you have receipt accounts and you have expenditure accounts. So these line items right here, like you have your expenditure account items, so you're not gonna see any revenue coming in on those. So each of these line items, all we're looking at is budget. So if you say, let me go to page 61, just so I'm
So
in
you
the
don't
right.
go back and look at.
Yeah, so you don't look at revenue, because you can't see revenue. All you can see is expenditures. I mean, that's where you have to understand the system. Fund accounting is not a checkbook. Fund accounting is you have receipt account lines, your fund holds your cash balance. Your account lines, you have receipt account lines, and you have expenditure account lines. So when I go into 492 or 1112, 31111, location 380, it's going to show an appropriation that their available spend of $153,736. That's all I can see in that line item. And then I can see what they're appropriated and how much they've spent and how much they have left of that $153,738. There's no cash balance in that account line.
So the main problem here is when we budget, if that number's not correct, because I would never approve something over what the revenue is, because I've harped on it for years.
Yeah.
My assumption would have been that what's in the book is correct.
Mhm.
And so as long as we don't go over that, then we're not over the
Well,
revenue to expenditures.
Absolutely. Here's what to look at. When you look at your Form 4B.
And I don't bring the edit plan to the budget, so.
When you look at your Form 4B, which is what the DLG, Department of Local Government Finance approved this, they're gonna look at 1112 as a whole. They're gonna look at your edit and say, okay, you're bringing in $1 million, okay? The whole pie piece, okay? Then our budget, we don't budget special projects. We don't budget building maintenance. The only thing we budget is economic development, jail, and highway. Those are the only three part of edit that we budget.
What about courthouse security?
And that's another screw up. So that's another issue. So you've got those three expenditures. So in your Form 4B, those are the only expenditures you're listing. So you've got revenue,
So it looks like it's under.
it looks like it's,
But, okay, I want to go back to 24. You're saying that $316,932.35 was spent. What did your budget book say that was available for jail operations?
in
Was that the-
24.
Was that the 307,836?
It's whatever was in there.
No, this would be
In 24.
24,
24. What did
61.
you say was available?
It looks like it's a total.
Yeah,
What is it?
for jail operations, 307,836.
Okay, so that account was overspent roughly $10,000. So so no one monitors going beyond the budget by 10,000?
We watch these account lines. Let me look at the expenditures for 24 real quick and see.
It came in for additional,
And they could have come in for additional, correct? I'm not sure if they would have.
so it's not.
Okay, but the problem you get into
Yeah, I don't
is
know.
we have a fixed edit plan. And if they come in for additional appropriations, unless you're gonna take it away from somebody else, that money's 100% committed.
Okay, so let me go to 2024 real quick.
Other than the special projects,
We
you know,
can
that's
easily
our
see this.
ability to pay additional.
So here's my 4924, which I don't know if you guys can pull this up. You can kind of follow along here. 4927, it looks like they were appropriated 7,500 for jail janitorial maintenance supplies and spent every penny. For contracts, they were budgeted 153,736.
Is this all out of edit?
Well, that's the
That sounds like
4927.
special
Yeah.
legislation.
What?
Those
Special
contracts.
legislation is 1114.
I know, but the amount you were reading all, I thought it sounded like.
7,500, no, it's right here, 4927, you budgeted 7,500 for janitorial maintenance, you budgeted 153,736, which is in there. And they spent 153,700, maintenance contracts. The only unexpended they didn't have was 1,970. Utilities, they budgeted 100,000. And they didn't expend 8,481. Meals, they budgeted 25. That's their one. budgeted 25,000. Okay, so then I go here. That's the revenue in 2024. And 1112, here we go. So janitorial, 7,500.
There's additional appropriation July 24.
I don't recall 100,000 being budgeted for utilities
It's right here in the budget book,
in 24.
24.
Out of what?
Here's your budget book. I got papers here. $7,500 here, 153, 21, 25.
So that's where they came, that's where that 307, that total to that
So is that
307.
totaled up to that?
I'm checking to see.
But see, even at that,
Yeah,
if you
which one?
budgeted 307, they spent 316,932.
Yeah, they did an additional, you guys did an additional appropriation for 10,000 in July of
Out
2024.
of 1112? Who did?
I don't know, just has additional.
We looked at it.
Also looked it up.
Well, what was
I
that
probably should have
for?
allowed that. I should have, you
Well,
know,
you can't, I mean, if an edit plan, we have to follow. When was that, Kelly? What date?
July 26th.
July 26th. And it was out of 1112, and it was 10,000.
Additional, yeah.
looking to see.
So that would have been at the council meeting.
Mhm.
Look at that.
I'll look at that.
You want to go pull that, just pull the additional preparations for 2024? So basically, these are the numbers. Kelly, Wilgus, and I have went over them multiple times. I mean, we can sit here and discuss it all day long. I feel like we're in a good place with the edit plan. I know where things are, 2025, 2024, as far as the edit plan's been handled. You know, pretty much everybody got that flat amount. Any additional went into special projects. As you guys can see, here are the balances of each of the accounts. So I do want to talk a little bit here about courthouse security. So I've explained where jail is there. Courthouse security has a balance in it of $75,833.40. Okay, let me explain how this came to be. Every deputy is budgeted out of general fund. Okay, so every sheriff deputy is paid their salary out of Fund 1000. Okay, prior to 2024, and this is just one thing that it just happens. I mean, I'm sitting here taking ownership, you know, whatever. We have a new auditor that comes in who's never, you know, it just learn things. Things are going to happen. What used to happen is that money, if you guys remember at the beginning, I told you we received it in the 7,000, and we had money that went to general. Then we had some that went to 1112, and then we had jail operations. Well, that 75,833, whatever it is, that 833.40, that economic develop, or that the edit plan for courthouse
You're talking
security.
to 24.
Yes. In 2023, prior to 2024, it offset. It was, so that money never hit 1112, it just went to the general. So all of the sheriff officers were paid out of 1,000, our general fund, but that 75,000 basically was an offset for courthouse security, okay? So in a sense, you're budgeting for all of your office, for the courthouse security officer, or courthouse deputy, out of general, but you're putting money in $75,833.40 to offset it. You don't know if that salary was more than $75,833 or less, because there's different people out here, there, you know, different officers, different people at different pay rates, whatever. So when we made that change to where everything was going into 1112 in 2024, that money never got moved to general. There were no expenses for courthouse security in 2024. So technically, that 75,000 83340 that's sitting in 1112 should be moved to general.
Excuse me, right there a minute.
Okay.
Now, did you not say that the account numbers 41, 42, 43, those all revert at the end of the year and they do not carry balances forward?
Correct, but that 75,000 is still sitting in the cash balance of 1112.
But it's not allocated
No.
to security, it's just in the lump sum?
It's
of
just in the
money.
lump sum of cash. But you guys, the only thing I decided is, the way this was figured is because in March, the council approved, they did set these ordinance to build these edit funds where everything's gonna have its own. So then I have to take that money and, okay, how much are we moving to courthouse security? How much are we moving?
And that's where this all started,
That's where this all started.
because I said something's wrong, because this doesn't look correct.
Okay, so right now, the money for building maintenance, security, and our special projects is all laying in 1112 without actual connection to a service that because when we set up the maintenance end of it, we wanted that fund to build, so we had available funds for like different things necessary to the county.
There weren't budgeted
And
expenditures.
the intent was to roll it into the following year, and build us a balance so that when we faced with some challenges that we have to deal with, that we had money available for.
Yeah.
So that hasn't happened, but should happen with the new funds that have been established that do not revert
Correct.
after that, so.
Once we get these funds set up,
We just gotta find.
We're
the
good.
balance.
I just need you guys to help me figure out, or not help me, tell me, how are we going to divide this? I mean,
Okay, so is Kelly's gonna come over and tell us that about the $10,000 additional, which pretty much gets us to 23 or 4, where we know where we are. Let's see. So is this Riverboat? Okay.
1112.2. Here. This is the.
the request is in the back, I think. Let me see. Is that request there?
Jail operations list special, I don't know.
Additional funds requested.
1112 for jail operations, live special economic development.
I mean,
See, I think special economic development was 1114,
uh-huh.
not 1112. Because see, your edit plan is set in place, but the special economic development was the count that
So
paid for the
instead of
jail.
1112, it should have been
Should have
1112.
been 1114.
That was on that 10,000?
So they
It
just,
came down to
they just
special
put in the wrong
legislation.
account number.
It should have been out of 114.
I think that's what's happened there.
Because you wouldn't have had it in edit, and that's what put you over the $10,000.
So that's moved, so now we need to move 10,000 from 48.
Let's forget the details. That's the main thing.
Thanks, Kelly.
Okay. So now we're up, I think, if I can kind of review this, if everybody's, what has happened was the number put in that budget book for some reason wasn't the edit plan number. Okay, so based upon that, that's how they spent the money for 24, based upon the book, not the actual edit plan. Okay, so I think that's how we got the additional 42,000 over. 10,000 of it was an appropriation asked for in July, and it should have been out of 114 instead of 112. And then you wouldn't be spending money, additional edit money that we don't have, because it's all allocated.
Unless there was some mention of there's cash or something, but
I
there
don't
wouldn't have
think
been if there would have been a
Well, the
balance.
problem of it is you're always gonna have, the way it's
If there
set
would have been a non-reverted fund.
at
yes.
112 right now, you're gonna have cash in there because you're trying to build a cash balance this maintenance fund.
Mhm.
That's the concept behind
That's
it.
what
So,
started all this.
so that's the point, you know, you want to have that so that when you are faced with a substantial cost, that you've actually set aside some funds in order
Yeah.
to address it, rather than trying to take it out of the current year budget that might already be pretty tight. So that was the thought process. We would build that up. And so that means there's always going to be money in there as long as it's lumped into 112. So the appearance of having funding there will, and then the special projects, what we
It looks like
utilize
cash
that
is
for is, we set it aside primarily to match additional $500,000 in community crossings we may get. We didn't know, but we don't have funding, so we had the matching dollars for that. So that's one of the reasons that was done anyway. So, okay, so we're up to 24. So my thoughts in 25 is you haven't really overspent because you're still in 25. The problem of it is you've spent probably half of your money in the first quarter of the
133,000.
year.
Yeah.
Because see, you're set aside,
274, 122,
Yeah, and they've spent 133
133.
in the first
133, 620.64, yeah.
so that's where you're at now. It's just simply now I don't know what other funds, whether you're pulling all the jail operations out of edit money. Is there any other funds that have been set aside for jail operations that have not been touched? So where are you at? My question is,
So
the entire budget for jail operations, and if we get it from 4 or 5 different sources, have those remained untouched so that those balances can carry on through the year? Where are you?
So you've got
proportionate to the-
jail,
Public safety.
they've got some in public safety.
30.
What'd you say, Kelly? Which one?
30, right?
Page 40. So you've got some budget there, you've got some budget for jail in 22.
So what's your total jail operation budget?
So for which fund? Total? Can I just give you?
All of them.
Let me just give you.
And the reason is, let's say right
We can
now,
move
we're
some.
we're through with a quarter, the 25% of 2025.
Kelly, can
First
you add
quarter's
these?
done.
Or
So-
somebody add these?
At this point, if we had allocated $1 million for operation, we would have effectively been okay if we spent 250.
Okay,
And if it's 500,000, it'd be 125.
so
Whatever
out
it
of
is.
general, for jail, there is a budget of 649,079. Jail out of lit public safety, which is page 40 of your budget book,
Should be 300.
is proposed is 295, 270.
I
295,
don't think that's
270.
correct. So I think we,
On public safety?
That's probably correct.
That's right.
see, what we did was between 24 and 25, we are receiving $60,000 more gross. So the current edit plan calls out fixed dollar amount.
She's talking public
This is
safety. though.
lit public safety.
Oh, yeah, she's talking
This is
public
lit.
safety.
Okay, out of lit public safety,
Lit
how much you
public
getting
safety.
now?
295, 270.
Okay, gotcha.
And then on page 56, jail operations edit, the edit dollars
It
is,
should be 274.
it should be 274, but it's not. It's 398,023.
But it needs
That's
to be
1,342,372.
274.
That needs to be down to 274, 122. The only income we're bringing into that is 274,
So
122.
that comes to a total of 1,342,000.
372.
And
How
we're
much is
in
it?
budget.
One million.
Which one did you
The
add?
only one we're off
Did you add
budget in,
the,
like we're bringing,
274?
it's budgeted in general. revenue, because it's part of the general, and we're budgeted in general. It's budgeted in lit, because we're good, more revenue than
And public
Expenditures.
safety.
in lit public safety. We're off in edit, because you're only bringing in 274, and you've got budgeted 398,023. So,
For 25.
for 25,
I think,
and you're,
how much have they expanded out of that account, Chris?
what'd you say?
How much have they spent out of that?
133, 620.
No, I'm talking about total.
Oh, I don't have.
How much money have they spent totally for jail operations up through the first quarter?
I have to run a report out of general. Do you want me to go do that real quick?
I just want the total to see where they actually are. Does
No,
that come up
he wants
with David,
jail, like
1.1,
jail. So you
2,
go
1,
on
8,
and have expenditure report for 1,000.
which is what it actually should be.
Oh,
Because
All
I've
the
used
council
274,
It's zero.
so that's our variance here of
And
120.
then run 1170, all the towns,
The match,
location 380.
274, 182.
So see, if we were actually following the edit plan,
274.
So she's gonna go run an expenditure report on those two funds, so
So
that
the
that
edit
location.
plan, so we want to change. it.
okay, now, wait a minute, you're taking it out, where's 649 is general, right?
Yeah.
And then the other one, the 295
1170
is
with,
public safety,
with public safety.
and then edits, is when we have 3 accounts.
Yeah, but I've already got the 133, I've already got your
Okay.
expenditures for that, so I just need to run the expenditures for those two.
133K out of that one. Okay. Then we'll know,
The public safety is 1170, I think.
see, and in essence, and what I'm doing here is I added up what actually is in the edit plan, plus the general, plus the public safety, and we should have $304,628 would be 25% if we follow the actual edit plan that would be available. So,
So we just have to move expenditures out of.
well, no, we don't. You've done it, you're just gonna have to start utilizing some of the balances. That's either through the general fund or through the,
But I have to
Public
have it
safety.
set, the appropriations have to be set in there. I need to be able to, or they, I see what you're saying, change
if
the,
you have, in other words, it's like having $10 in my right pocket and 20 in the other, and you've spent the whole 10. You still have the 20, so you're gonna have to quit spending out of this pocket that's empty. And that's 1112 or 4927, and start spending it out of another fund to get yourself back in balance.
So this,
Depending on what their total is.
so this 304 became, on jail operations, became 398 for 25
4927 became 1112.
No, I'm just
We're
talking
about
total
It
amount.
wasn't right.
304 became 398. Was that because you were trying to make up what was being spent in prior years out of special legislation? The 65,000 or whatever we were
Okay, so I
budgeting?
don't understand, because I didn't do this budget.
Well,
I mean,
this past year, you said it was like 398.
You guys moved things, I think.
No, I'm thinking that you probably put in what was being spent out of special legislation since we don't know where it was spent out there.
so let me look here,
It's part of that thing.
56. So this
On page
is,
40.
dang it, I'm ripping pages out of my book. I said, dang it.
I think it was page 40, Chris.
Right
It
here
was
by the Scarlet.
65,000.
Find the positive, right? So here's the changes, which here we got, I put everything in lit, 'cause they're different. So, contracts, and this is submitted to me from the jail. And I know you guys
Do you
moved some
have any
things.
first
So
quarter
the contracts,
expenses
what
that go
was
for like the entire
requested
year? In other
was
words,
here.
like,
So you went up there,
because I
And
mean,
then
that was the question.
jail,
If it was heavier up front.
Yeah,
supplies,
like we buy
moved
our
that. This was
insurance and we
moved.
buy software services and that
maintenance
goes for the whole year.
contracts, that
So
was
you might have a
21,
bigger group of
6, and it went up to
expenses you dealt with right at the
51.6.
beginning of the
It's
year.
You
not
got
follow that
utilities
that aren't
was
something that
100,
carries through.
went to
It-
95,
Well, she started.
meals was 25 and went up to
I know, but
45.
it may have ballooned what he paid in the first quarter. And he
And
won't
then-
meet,
Not
you
to be
won't
on that
need
same
those
track.
expenses in the next.
These two were moved, these were not budgeted,
If we follow
and
that
these
same
were in
track.
general, and you guys moved them.
Remember that 65,000 that we said,
Yes,
that
if
pay
you
that
get
out of your,
something.
pay for your meals somewhere, because we were gonna free up 65 for that though?
You moved 45
I
and
mean, it's just
30.
in general, your
Yeah,
operations of your jail,
Please.
anything that would be like something
What year
you
is
paid
this?
that
These two you
that
moved.
provided
This year.
service for the entire
You guys
year.
moved these.
Like if
These
you
were
were
paid out of
buying
this
like
fund
a
last year.
software service where they charge you 10
We
grand,
moved these from
but that
general.
covers you for the whole year. So you would
The
experience a
45.
higher cost
That's only 35 there.
to begin with, and then you wouldn't have any cost then go forward.
They requested these. You guys, they didn't, you added these. You moved those.
They requested 0 and we moved them here.
You moved them from another fund. I think they were in general, and you moved them here. Because you moved things. Can we pay?
remember this 65,000 that was being paid out of special legislation, that was all that we had to remove.
It's really bad.
That was all that was being budgeted. But I think we did that with,
She's gotta have to head back.
So you moved it, from 1114.
to where? To here?
So these right here,
That's only 35.
I know.
This is 65. So where'd the other go?
Which one is it?
Maintenance contracts, building
It's
repairs.
It added up
Oh,
here.
building repairs, because we already have that,
Yeah.
building maintenance.
Yep.
That's why, but
But see, if you look, this one used to be 153. Wait, hold on. In the other book, your contracts was 153. That went up. And then your maintenance contracts was 21 and it went up to 51. So you moved part of that. Or we, not you.
11, 12, 49.
What am I doing now? Okay.
So what are your
and
totals
likely
out of
because it said.
public
there's
safety
cash.
and general?
He's talking.
Oh, sorry, Randy.
What's that?
General.
Do you want 11, 12, or do you want 49?
What's he asking?
I'm just in general, if you paid, whether it's out of the general public safety and or the 112 account, anything that is a 12-month period, in other words, you pay, Chris pays her software vendors, and it takes a lot of money the first of the year, but then that's not an expense that she experiences the remainder of the year. So when we look at our quarterly expenses for the jail, we'll know that in quarter 2, 3, and 4, they should be a little less because of those annual costs.
Chris,
Okay.
yours is back.
Okay, so general,
If they were front-loaded.
general expenses paid so far this year for jail is 269, comma, 434.63. Lit public safety for jails expenditures. Oh, that's the grand total. Total. 99. Kelly, is this the right one? The last one? 99, count, yeah, lit public safety, county share, 99,160.09. 99,160.09.
133, 620, 64. We're way over budget.
But that's the problem. Yeah, it needs to be ending.
Right.
But the problem is when we're presented this, we can only go by what we have. That's where I don't understand.
So, let's see where we're off.
It's just my stomach growling, sorry.
Where's mine? I do that also.
The budget amount is,
That's 505.
Yeah,
is it
502s
I
are
said
I got.
502, yeah.
I must hit something wrong.
What are you talking about?
The total, what they've expended in the first quarter.
Did you get 502?
Okay, and let me just, if we use the proper edit money,
The 274.
yes, your total would have been $1,218,515.55. If you include, and that's what David added up, and I'm gonna trust that he did it right. If we included the 398,000, like your budget book said,
Okay,
you'd be at 1,342,372. So if I take that inflated number and divide it by 25, which is a quarter of the year, we should have spent $335,593, and you've spent $502,215. That's about
but
$165,000.
some of that's out of general,
Okay, let me go back
so
to,
that's not,
if I take the general budget right here,
Okay.
649,079,
okay,
I took 295,270 out of public safety.
Correct.
I used this big number, 398,023, and I think that's where David come up to 1,342,372. I didn't add those. I'm trusting he's right. If
Okay,
I take that 1.3 million here times 25%, because we're one quarter in,
Gotcha.
if we slice the pie,
Mhm.
$335,593.
Yep.
If it's
I
evenly
get what you're
allocated.
saying. Yep.
Okay? These totals.
Yep.
What you just gave us, 502, 215.
So hopefully, what I'm gonna say is we need to find out if those maintenance contracts
We're all paid.
were all paid up front in
And
full.
are they $165,000 worth of contracts? Because that's what you spent above 25% of your budgeted costs.
Here's the whole thing, guys. That's not on me. I don't keep track of the
I'm
jail
not
budget.
saying it is. I'm
You know,
just saying,
I'm giving,
we are now
I'm
in the
giving-
25.
I'm giving an amount that they're allowed to spend. I don't really care if they spend it in January, all of it in January, or they spend it divided by 12. I just
Yeah,
don't let
I
it go
understand
over.
what you're saying.
Yeah, you see what I'm saying? So I'm just saying, I know that there's a
It's
lot of
farming.
things, you know, we've talked about it
We need a
at,
dinger in there, like, hey,
Yeah.
slow your roll.
we've talked about it at budget time too, where we look at, see, oh my gosh, you know, just the small, I'm not saying the small things, but looking at the small amounts. Stan, I know you pointed it out, that, hey, you've got $2,000 in office supply, but you've only spent 500. Do you really need 2,000? I personally know a lot of people, you know, I buy stamps. I spend all my stamp money at the beginning of the year, you know, because I don't want to pay more, you know? You give me $1,500 to buy stamps, I'm gonna spend $1,500 in January on stamps, because you know what? I'm not gonna pay less. I'm gonna be able to use those forever stamps and have them. You see what I'm saying? So, do people do that? That's where, I don't keep track of everybody's budget. I just know what they're allowed to spend and do that. So,
Some are annually, but some are quarterly as well.
Okay.
Quarterlies won't be relevant,
Yeah.
because that's,
Can you
we're
tell
trying to
the
get-
amount of the annual ones that were paid? Can she look that up? See, they have 161,000 contract. Total.
I know like
that's medical though, and I don't think that one pays. I think that one
I know our
pays.
medical.
Oh, medical, okay, medical, yes. Medical's
That's
quarterly,
quality,
here, right here. It's this then. 180.
The whole,
that's economic
I think
development.
they just do it
So
more.
where are they at?
I think
It's
they-
contract,
I think the
51.
medical contract.
So they don't even have that much. So you only have 51,600 in contracts, so
well, there's maintenance contracts and other contracts too. There's 2 contracts. So you've got this,
not this. I don't count that.
those are contracts.
Well, medical. It's that,
Oh, okay,
it's
gotcha.
that medical thing.
Is there anything budgeted in another?
Here you go, Al.
Is 5160?
Yeah, but we're looking at this one, right? We're only looking at the edit one.
I think he was looking at the whole number as a whole.
Okay, so we have 5160.
Yeah, he's looking at the whole number,
The whole funding available,
the whole 502 that we spent.
if I use what the actual edit
Okay,
is,
here.
it's even uglier.
Hold on, coming
But if
back.
I use what the inflated amount is in your budget
I don't think
book,
there's anything in
there's
general
still
contracts.
$165,000 overspent.
It's just 51.6.
Guess so.
So there's only 51.6 that we can find outside of medical.
If that's paid 100% upfront. Some of them may be quarterly, some may be monthly.
We need to know of the,
But even at that, even if you said 100% of those 51,000 is paid
We
upfront,
still have 100
you're still 110,000 plus that's
overspent.
overspent for the jail, because you're gonna hit a brick wall.
Yeah.
And it'll come in August.
Or before.
or before.
It's not gonna make it that far, I don't think. Hmm.
I know the medical contracts went up.
Yeah, but that's different.
Well,
You only have
it's
50.
past our hour.
Yeah.
Is it time to ponder this and get back and try to come up with a solution? Because I don't necessarily have a good feel right now. What's the thought on everybody? So we don't drag this on forever.
Well, we're gonna have to get the starting balances right from prior years.
I think,
What needs to be put into
I
these
think we
new?
can, I think we can do that in the edit. I think we're fairly close with that, especially with the $10,000 appropriation now we see. And the problem of it is it's being paid out of the edit based upon the book, not based upon the plan. So that's, we're gonna
But we
have,
can fix that going forward, but I need to get the balances in these
Right.
funds,
or
correct?
what you've actually done with the number sheet provided, and this answered my question.
Mhm.
What I had for 2023 should have been 129,694 because I had put it into a 12-month allocation for the nickel we had set aside for building maintenance. What you did is you didn't start taking the money out
Till March.
until April. So you took a quarter of the money away. That's why you're at 115,429. Now, that again, why I have economic development at 259,388 and you have it at 297. Once again, because you used 22's edit plan versus 23's edit plan.
Because 23 change didn't happen.
We
till
went in
April.
whenever, because we couldn't use those percentages
Mhm.
because it wouldn't leave anything set aside for the building maintenance. So that's how the jail ended up with more money too, because it's for a limited period of time. You did it on a 75% of the year. I figured it on 100% of the year. So that's where that came from. So that's just a matter of, we need to sit down and decide how we want to allocate, whether we want to claw that money back and say we're going to put it back, or we want to leave it in there and say we're going to leave that alone and do it the way Chris did, however we decide to do that. And then we can start balances.
We got like proposed, I know it's up to them.
Mhm.
Didn't you have a proposed plan that you thought we could remedy this?
Well, I know that somewhat. So I was just gonna bring up that, like I said earlier, that the courthouse security is paid out of general. And that it was budgeted in 24 out of general, it's budgeted out of 25 in general, okay?
But we just saw it as deputy, so.
Correct. It's just deputy, because there's not one person that's there, okay? So we have 75,833, can you check that times 2 for me?
Times what?
Times 2, easy, 150,000 something, probably 151 something. So just quick looking at it, okay, so we've got 75,833.40 from 2024 sitting in 1112 cash. And in 2025, we have that deputy budgeted in general again. So in a sense, we've kind of, I don't want to say double budgeted, because the 75, there's no guarantee that that 75,000 is covering the cost of a courthouse security deputy. That's just the amount that edit dollars to offset the expense for it. So
And in
basically,
previous years, it was always transferred to the general fund.
correct. In
The only one it
2024.
wasn't was 24.
24.
Yeah.
So just a thought, just trying to think of things that we can think about this. Of course, there's 25 that, you got to look at. But if you took the 25, there were 75,833.40 from 2024. And since the deputy is already budgeted out of general and, suffice to pay it out of general, and you take the money from 2025, that's $150-some thousand to offset the 176 negative. So then you're looking at just 26,000, right, 26,000 to, I'm just trying to fix a problem.
Okay, in 2024, we're getting too many hours there.
Right.
What are we gonna do with the 42,000 that was overspent? Because the budget book said there was more in there, they went ahead and spent it, but it wasn't allocated in the edit plan.
Correct.
So somebody's gonna come up $42,000 short. Highway, jail, security, the building maintenance, the special project. Somebody, because we have a limited pot of money, it's all allocated, so somebody's coming up 42,000 short.
Well, and that's what I'm making a
Okay,
suggestion
so,
of.
but if we take the 42,000 out of the 75, it's gonna leave you 33 left over for 25, in addition to whatever you bring in this
75,
year.
yes.
So 75 and 33, we're gonna be at what, 108?
Yeah, but it's sitting negative, so it's if.
But I'm saying
yeah, I see what you're saying.
if you take the courthouse security for 25 and the remainder left over from 24, you'll have about $108,000 that you could, plow into 25.
Well, you're basically just doing a plus and a minus here because this 176 negative is including the 133 that's already been spent this year.
But that's
So
just,
out of this
that's
year.
just today,
We just,
okay?
correct.
But when we look back and add up what's actually being spent in a quarter, there has to be, what are we gonna do? We're gonna just ignore the
It's gonna
fact
be a
that
lot
we're
over.
hugely overspending what's budgeted?
I don't think you can change the past. It's already been done. You've got to find ways to offset it. And that's where I was just saying that instead of taking the 75,000 for 2024 and the 75,000 for 25 and moving it to general, which is exactly where it should be, use that to offset to get a zero cash balance in jail operations where they're just starting with the money that's coming from 2025, but then you're gonna have to take their appropriations that they've already spent out of 1112 for 4927 because the money for 2025 is in 4927. I know that's. I know.
And 11112 has not collected sufficient funds in 25
For jail operations.
offset what's been spent.
What you're saying is put it in a starting point.
I need a starting point.
Yeah,
I knew-
we can get to there.
Yeah.
The problem of it is, even if you take all the security money,
They're still gonna be short $26,000.
exactly, starting, right now, and that's not even considering the expenditures that are being expended for the first
Correct,
quarter.
but then you can take money out of 4927 because right now there's $119,000.
We're never gonna get enough. I mean, with what we're spending,
You're never gonna get, right, that's why you've gotta use
If-
money from another pot.
if we continue to spend at this rate, we're gonna be at $2,010,000 for jail
Which is
operations.
exactly the point that I know you said you didn't want to talk about 25, but 25
No, I
is
wanted
an
to talk
issue.
about 23 and 24 first, instead of get them all jumbled together.
Yes.
So now we're up to 25, and even with the inflated numbers used in their budget book, that's only a $1.3 million budget, and we're spending at a rate of in excess of $2 million.
So you've got two problems.
So-
One, you gotta fix the negative balance. And two, you've
We're
gotta
gonna
fix the
spend
budget.
$700,000 more than's budgeted, even at the inflated rate, if the current spending continues.
Oh, it can't.
It can't be.
It can't,
Can't
it can't,
wait.
it
No.
can't happen.
I don't know where you gotta come up with the money,
I know
It
that.
can't happen.
but that's where you are right now, these
I'm
numbers.
hoping this first quarter somehow is kind of loaded more than what, I don't know. I mean, I don't know that. But I agree with you if you-
75 and 75, it's 151,666.80. You apply that to jail operations, that brings you down to the 24,719.67. You take the 10,000 that was appropriated, that should have been in the 1114.
That'll be transferred back.
They're down to
It'll go
14,000.
14,000. So
Okay,
you're closer.
yeah, we can get there with that. Okay, that's
That's
not,
what I just said.
that's not as big a challenge as the simple fact.
25.
Please listen to me. In the first quarter, we spent $502,000.
Out of three funds.
Out of three
Two
funds.
funds are balanced,
Out of
one is
three,
not.
three funds. Our budget, even with the mistake, is 1.3 million. We're gonna be, $650,000 short if we continue to spend at that rate. So
If
that has nothing to do with the
all of
edit line.
those are recurring expenses, you don't know that. I don't know that.
But it
so-
does,
Who knows that?
I'm gonna have to sit down with them and go through and
Okay.
say, yeah.
so hoping some of those are
yeah, so
Yes.
at this,
loaded front.
at this point, I think we need to get more information because I think we can work through some of these numbers for the edits so you know what to transfer into the new fund. But the jail operations needs
Oh, my.
some more work.
Like I said, Kelly and I gave you an idea. I know that Kelly Harding had emailed and said, do you have any suggestions? I'm giving you the suggestion that we have. There's two issues. One, addressing the negative balance. I can't move a cash balance, so we have to get a starting point for 2025. We're giving you a suggestion. Doesn't mean you have to take it or whatever. If you have other suggestions, whatever. So we're down to a difference of $14,000 with the cash balance. Then you can address the next issue of the budgeting issue. And that's where you're gonna have to sit down with the jail, or I'm gonna have to sit down with the jail and be like, okay, let's go through your expenses in this first quarter. Is this one that's gonna happen every month, or is this gone? How much, what expenses do you have left? That's what has to happen next. But I really, like I said, in there's two issues, 1 and 2. So getting the starting cash balance, all of the money for 2025 is going into the new funds. So all we're dealing with is the 2024. Now, there were expenses paid for 2025 out of 1112 for jail, because these new funds were just set up. So you have January and February and March claims that were paid out of 1112, which is what the total of 133,620.64.
Which is about half of the money
Correct.
in the first quarter.
And there's only 119,201.58 in 4927 right now. So there's not even enough in there, which we just did get lit supplemental this week. So we just received it in yesterday. So we might be close to that 133 to where,
The lit supplemental goes.
not lit supplemental, we just got monthly lit, monthly lit.
Okay.
Sorry, I said monthly lit, we just got our monthly money. We get monthly allocations, and it normally comes in around the 10th. So your monthly lit and edit. And I couldn't tell you right now what that, let me see what that amount
About
is.
22,000, something like that.
Is it 20, what's the one?
That's on the monthly, correct?
Yeah, we get it monthly, I was trying to look and see what the
Maybe they have
monthly,
over budgeted.
25 revenue.
Is it possible? Is it possible that we maybe over budgeted some of these things?
Well, for what, for which one? Oh, for
Yeah.
the other lines?
Well, they've already spent it though.
They haven't
I
spent
mean,
all
going
of it, but you
forward.
can where you can do an appropriation adjustment. You can lower adjustments just as well
Yeah.
as you can.
You do it in reverse.
Yeah, I
You
know,
check-
but I
you check
just-
the numbers from the start? I mean,
Huh?
we would have to go through and check each one of those.
Yeah.
To see
Can
if
you
the
take-
beginning balance was even correct.
Take 68,541, sorry. 68,541.63.
Yeah.
Divided by,
Get it from some, I mean,
divided by
Well, that's what we
commissary or
have to
anybody else
decide,
or
but the
some, I don't
question
know.
becomes, the jail
Okay, and
operations,
I'll take that,
where it's at,
plus
what's going on.
119.
Well beyond
I know.
even the
201.
mistaken budgets you put together.
.58.
My checking account ain't hard to do, it's $1.25.
Okay, you guys
So
ready?
we can't ask you for money then.
All right, let me tell you one thing. Okay, say that amount again.
Me too, the stock market sucks today.
142.
Okay, whatever it is, what are we talking about?
That is the cash balance in 4927, not counting any expenditures that are gonna be coming through.
So what
So-
was the 119?
What was
The
that?
119 is how much they had received from, their previous balance plus the previous balance, the remaining balance that was in 4927,
140 something.
because there was still money in there, plus their January, February, and March monthly income. And then we just received it in April, so that puts it to 142.
So then what you're saying is you had a balance in the 4927, which is edit money prior to 2024, okay? Then in 2024, you switched it, spent it out of 1112 and spent well beyond the edit plan. But you still had a balance from the old edit money that
Which
never
was-
was used to offset it.
But why did we
In what?
49?
Because that's the.
4927, that's the
That's
actual,
New.
that
Oh,
fund,
it's
no, it's an old account.
It's an old account.
That's what they used to. We had,
Keep putting money in.
we changed in
We stopped using it in
24,
24.
about January 17th or 20th
Yeah.
and started paying it out of 112.
1, 2.
for some
I haven't
reason,
put any
instead of the
25
old
money
jail
in
operating,
112.
the old jail operating fund
I do
had the
not,
money from
no,
edit put in
no
it.
25
Then they
money is
spent
in
it out.
112.
That's why there's
It's
no
all in the new funds.
irregularities in those earlier.
That was for 4920.
And then at 24, it just
1112.
stopped it, put it in 1112, which is the sack of all the money, and you started spending.
4927
And then you
was
spent
because that was the
beyond
only
what the
one that
other
had its
So
own
where
fund.
what the council
The only one that had its own fund was jail
Back to
operations. Remember I told you that
4927.
the lit money
account that was set
for
up.
jail
That's what I
operations went into
assumed.
4927, courthouse security went into
That's the
general,
only
and then the
thing.
others.
They set up new accounts for these other ones now too.
So we set up new accounts with their account number?
This one's
This
new,
one was-
that one was
it an
already-
old account, and they just
This
started
one's
using it
new,
again.
this one's
Okay.
new,
Why they
this
ever
one's
stopped
new,
using it,
this one's
I have
new,
no
and that
idea.
one's
That she
new.
said
That's the
basically like,
only one that was set up.
said she can't use it for some reason, and she
What'd you
started
say?
using one.
All the money has to go into 1112, so you have a pretty balance, or pretty picture of what,
But why wasn't 112 switched over to 4927?
because 4927 is just jail operations. 1112 is the DLGF number for lit distribution.
I know, but why,
Edit
for
distribution.
all those years we were using 4927, why wasn't it transferred into 1112
That's what's being
and
done now.
transferred over to 4927?
That's what's being done.
Just like it always was, and then we wouldn't have all.
So now-
So what happened before, it was in, it came into the 7,000 and then it dispersed out, okay?
And the 7,000 number includes the whole communities. That means it's Tell
Yes.
City, Candleton, Troy,
Yes,
everything comes into that. It's receipts in from the state.
correct. So it comes in before 2024, it came into the 7,000. Courthouse security went to general, jail operations went to 4927, and then the other parts, the highway and all that went into 1112. So then when we went to do budget time, and I ran a report on 1112, it's not showing all of our lit income because the courthouse security and the jail operations never hit 1112. So you would have to take 1112 plus 4927, then figure out how much you threw into general to get your accurate lit income, lit revenue. So what they told me to do and what we're doing now in 2025 is everything goes into 1112. And then, so it goes from 7,000 to 1112, and then now we disperse it out to jail operations, courthouse security, economic development, boom, boom. So then when you run your report on your lit income, everything's in there. You run your disbursements on your lit income, everything's going out. So lit should, 1112 should zero out every month. But then when you go run a report on jail operations, you're gonna see your income in that fund and your expenditures in that fund. When you run a report on each fund, you're gonna see all the ins and outs.
And see,
And they're gonna hold cash value.
and what she
Cash
did
balance.
was set up accounts,
Mhm.
41, 42, 43, and use reference to the 11112 fund. And had she had not set up the accounts and just took the 11112 and sent it over to 4927 fund, from one fund to the other, then you wouldn't have this mixture of all these monies, other than the highway, the special projects, the maintenance, and economic development.
But on account lines, you're not gonna be able, it's not gonna be a risk, you're not gonna see all, you would, in 1112, 42, which is,
I don't know, 41, 42,
41,
43,
those.
45.
whichever one says, you're not gonna see expenditures. You're only gonna see revenue, because those are revenue account lines. You have to go through the whole 1112 expenditure report and look at location and say, okay, that's jail. Look at this and say, okay, that's economic development. This is, anyway, yeah,
Yes, that's what she did.
anyway,
So, I think we need to get more information on current operations to where we
So do
are.
you want me to meet with the jail and go over each of their expenditures and get an estimate of what
Yeah, where you're
expenditures they
at.
have left?
And provide them to us.
Okay.
And then we're gonna have to reconvene or do something in order to come up with an idea. And I think in the meantime, we need to think about this process. Everybody okay with that? Get out of here instead of spending all day, because we're gonna be lacking these numbers to figure out what's happening. With that said, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Second, All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.